Today I want to see if $24.98 can save a life. According to my YouTube studio, ads on my videos have generated $24.98 in revenue. Now obviously YouTube hasn't actually paid me this money yet. We need another 10,000 or so views for that. But I think we can do more good with it than it's doing just sitting there right now. So we're gonna look at a couple different charities and we're gonna see if we can have a measurable impact if we send it to the right place. I'm not here to pressure you into donating money. In fact, I'd rather you pressure me into continuing to do this because one, it's your views that generate the revenue, but two, because I really do believe there is a single best charity that this money can go to, and we are gonna find it together. You would think giving money to charity would be the easiest thing in the world, but it feels quite complicated, at least to me. In the past, before I knew the things that I'm going to share with you today, donating money felt overwhelming. I didn't feel generous. It felt like I was taking an exam where the stakes were impossibly high. Like, what if you donate to the wrong charity? What if the money you donate just gets swallowed up in admin fees? What if it doesn't actually help anyone? It feels like that responsibility is on you, which feels like a lot. I'm just gonna gloss over the psychology behind this because I really want to get to the meat of the problem, but I think there is some fundamental information to understand here. Firstly, we have scope neglect. So one person in pain feels urgent, but like 1,000 people in pain feels more like statistics. Then you have moral overwhelm. If there are too many needs and causes and not enough clarity. Then you have proximity bias, where we sort of evolved to help the people within arm's reach rather than the people an ocean away. We have a bit of an ingrained hyperlocal loyalty that doesn't extend much beyond a few dozen people. Then we have like the future me is better fallacy. You convince yourself that you'll donate later when you're richer or wiser or more stable. It also sort of feels like you're proclaiming that you're in a good place, even when it feels like this situation is very precarious to us. We are surrounded by uncertainty, and it feels like we have to reduce this significantly before we donate in case we ever end up on the other side of the equation, needing other people's help. And so all in all, I think we just sort of freeze. But that is why I think today matters. I'm limiting myself to one charity, and I'm gonna let this tiny number teach me how to give better. By the way, I've already shortlisted a few early contenders, but I'll introduce them after I explain the framework that I used to get here. So, engineering caps on. We have a charity, which is gonna act like a system for us. It has inputs, it has outputs, and it has this like black box of inefficiencies going on here. I think a good charity tends to do 5 things. Number 1, it proves its impact with data. Not vibes, not sad music or puppies. I think it uses actual numbers. Number 2, I think it would have an insanely high marginal impact per dollar. So I want to know, what can $1 do? What can $10 do? Number 3, it would respect local expertise. The people closest to the problem, I think, often have the best solutions. Number 4, it would be transparent. I want to be able to see its accounting, its trials, its failures, its data, all the research that goes into it. I want to see it. And number 5, it should let you trace where your money goes. I want to see the mosquito net. I want to see the medication. I want to see the cash transfer. Whatever it is, I want to know what it's doing. The charity should also do something that you find subjectively valuable or meaningful. And I'll talk about this more later on when I talk about sustainability in donation. But if you're a utilitarian or a consequentialist, I would highly recommend checking out Peter Singer's work in this area. He has a book and a website called The Life You Can Save. And if you go on the website, you'll find an impact calculator. So you input the amount of money you want to donate, and it'll tell you exactly what a charity can do with that money. And if you just don't know what cause is most important to you, looking at his book is a good place to start because he'll start to posit different ideas. He'll put different moral quandaries against each other. Like, do you think it's more important that one child gets dewormed or that 10 people have mosquito nets in their homes? Do you think it's more important that a family gets fed for a day or that someone's surgery gets subsidized? And this is all going to depend on your own preferences and your own experiences. And I'm not going to tell you what is or isn't most important here. But regardless of what you think, what you value should be tied to a clear outcome. So, speaking of clear outcomes, the first charity I've shortlisted here is the Against Malaria Foundation, because 100% of your donation goes to buying insecticide-treated nets. It's $2 per net. They monitor and report on the use of their nets, and they also track them, so you can see exactly where your net goes. I know immediately people get caught up on me choosing a charity that has an impact so far away as my first charity. So I want to tug on that emotional thread a little bit. When you grow up in a village or a small town and disaster strikes, people show up for you because you know everyone, or at least like your dog knows everyone. If your roof caves in during a winter storm, or you have like a medical emergency, or you run out of food, or whatever is going on, people will show up with ladders or wood or like casseroles, right? All this to say, I think in these circumstances, you show up for each other because you need each other. Helping isn't a virtue, it's a habit. And then I moved to a city with millions of people. Every apartment building I've lived in Toronto has had more residents in it than the entirety of that village that I'm talking about, right? The idea of a neighbor gets blurry. So yes, there are people around you who need help, absolutely. But there are also people very far away who need help more. So the question is, who deserves the $24.98 more? It's a tricky question, and I don't think it has a right or a wrong answer, but here's how I frame it now. Local giving builds community. It makes your life feel more meaningful. And therefore I think your local donations should be more personalized. They should be things like your time or your presence. Global giving saves the most lives per dollar. It is mathematically undeniable. And it's also very impersonal. So I think it's okay if your donation is something impersonal, like money. So I don't think we need to choose between heart and logic. I think we just need to decide where the thing that we are specifically donating, whether it be time or talent or money or whatever, has the most non-interchangeable impact. And funny enough, that's where the second charity contender comes in, which is Give Directly. So Give Directly does direct cash transfers to individuals in poverty. The idea here being that there's no middleman taking part of your donation away and keeping it for themselves. There's no money being squirreled away. And you can maximize the amount of agency that the person receiving your donation has, because they can then choose exactly what they want to do with that money, right? A lot of people seem very against this. A lot of people don't want to necessarily just hand money to a homeless person because they worry about what they might do with it. I personally don't really understand this. I think there's also more and more research all the time that this is a really efficacious way to donate to people in need. To expand on what we were talking about before, you'll often hear people say things like, if you can't donate money, donate time. And while I think this is a really beautiful sentiment, it can be completely inefficient. If a charity needs accountants, and I show up with a heartwarming smile and a go-getter attitude and my very mediocre Excel skills, I'm not the hero here. The way I frame this in my head is by categorizing each type of donation by its virtue. So time is intimacy, talent is leverage, and money is flexibility. So what do I mean by that? So for example, most food banks, if not all, I think, would prefer a cash donation to like the cans of beans that you have in the back of your cupboard, for a couple reasons. One, they often have partnerships with grocers and wholesalers, so they can stretch a dollar way further than you can. They get better deals on the same food that you would be getting. But also, they work directly with their communities. They know what these people need. They have a pulse on it, right? And if you've never been to a food bank before, you might not realize this, but most of the food they give is fresh. So things like meat and dairy and produce. Things that you can't really donate to a food bank, right? It would be a logistical nightmare to do so on your end and on theirs. So in the case of a food bank, the best way for me to donate my talent would be by allowing someone else to donate theirs, right? I'm funding someone else's expertise. I'm funding someone else's connections. Someone who can negotiate a better deal with a wholesaler is going to do a lot more good than I am in that situation. Similarly, someone with better cultural fluency than I have is going to be way better at actually dealing one-on-one with people who are experiencing food insecurity right now. This brings us to our third charity contender, which is evidence action. Evidence action takes your donation and distributes it based on what they think is the most urgent or pressing issue right now. So again, we're allowing other people to use their expertise and their cultural knowledge to make decisions that we couldn't. I'm particularly drawn to the Deworm the World program, which is kind of an unsexy name, but they look like they have pretty ridiculously effective logistics, and they're entirely run by local health workers. So again, this is letting the experts do what they do best and just not getting in their way. There's one more thing that's worth slipping into the frame before we choose anything. I think it's something a little bit more personal, a little bit more human, maybe a little bit more controversial, but we'll have to see. I think sometimes the best charity for you to choose is the one that feels close to home. Not like geographically close to home, but the one that sits here, emotionally close or professionally close. Like close in the sense that it fits somewhere in your story. What we never quite spelled out is that when you care about something personally, when you understand it professionally, when it exists in your field or in your field of vision, that was corny, I think you're less likely to get overwhelmed by choice paralysis. You can make sharper decisions because you know what effective aid actually looks like. And I think you're more likely to stick around long term because the cause feels like part of your identity rather than like a box to tick off on your to-do list. My volunteer history is littered with seemingly random experiences that were just based on events that happened to me and things that were close to home at various stages in my life. So I ran a dance company and I taught dance to disadvantaged youth. I worked in sexual violence prevention for a little bit. I volunteered at food banks and in bolstering food security, and then all these other random things too. Like I was a mentor for women in STEM, lots of like little engineering conferences. I used to tutor math and coding. Random things, but they were all like important to me at different phases. I don't think it's a bad thing to donate your time and your presence to causes that you care about personally rather than things that are far away from you, because your experience lends itself to being better in those situations. If it's donating money, it's a completely different story. But for you to show up for someone who needs you, you should probably walk the walk. Got a little sidetracked there because we are donating money today. But remember, money is flexibility. So we are just taking our circle of care and expanding it a little bit because we have the flexibility to do so. For me, engineering and global health sit like right here and extend to the full volume of my ribcage, which is why a charity like One Day Health feels so meaningful to me, which is our fourth shortlisted contender, by the way. They build micro health centers across rural Uganda. Just little clinics run by local clinicians who understand the terrain better than any outsider ever could. It's lean, it's locally driven, and it's just the kind of systems thinking solution that makes the engineer in me exhale a little bit. If you've heard me talk about my professional dream, you'll understand why this is close to home for me. It's the kind of cause that just stays in your orbit for years. So to summarize, I don't think that choosing a charity that feels close to home is selfish. I think it's a really sustainable option for a lot of us. Okay, we've now covered local and global, emotional and rational, and personal and statistical choices. So I think we can go back to the bigger question now. Here's where the philosophy sneaks back in, as always, because we still haven't defined what enough looks like. Every culture and religion has tried to define what enough is. What is enough to keep? And what is enough to share? And maybe what's enough to feel responsible without feeling overwhelmed? Some churches talk about tithing, which literally translates to 1/10. So 10% of your income goes to the church. Others will just say it's something like whatever doesn't hurt, whatever you can comfortably give. Peter Singer's opinion is something to the effect of, if you can donate without sacrificing something of similar moral importance, you probably should. And if you read his work, the conclusion he comes to is essentially something like, okay, you can fight me on the specifics of what is and isn't worth sacrificing, but deep down, you probably recognize that what you're currently doing isn't enough, that you could be doing a lot more to help people around the world. And I think he's right there. But if I had to give my opinion, I would say enough probably isn't a number. I think it's more likely to be a direction or a posture. It might be the willingness to let your resources flow outward instead of pooling around you, like an active participation in the trickle-down effect. You can't donate everything, nor should you be expected to, by others or by yourself. But you can donate something, and you can donate wisely. This is why $24.98 matters, because it's not about the amount. It's about being the architect of your own habits. So let's evaluate those 4 charities with our original constraints. Which charity turns tiny money into big impact? Which charity has transparent data? Which respects local agency? And which fits my values? And here's my breakdown. To summarize AMF, $2 buys a long-lasting net. Nets prevent one of the deadliest diseases on Earth, malaria, of course. And you can literally measure reduced child mortality from these programs. Forgive directly, cash transfers produce some of the most rigorously measured recent improvements in well-being. Recipients will choose what they need most, and my donation would become a form of freedom. For evidence action, I know that deworming is one of the most cost-effective interventions ever recorded. It increases school attendance, long-term earnings, and community stability. And it's a really great systems engineering success story overall. And One Day Health finds gaps in existing rural health infrastructure, supports local talent through funding and training, and has a record of sustainable results through effective monitoring and improvement procedures. After weighing all of that, I'm going to choose the Against Malaria Foundation because $24.98 will protect multiple people for many years. If you guys are interested in seeing the photos or videos that come as proof, maybe I'll share them on my channel page in one of those posts so you can see the impact that you're having. But this is where the money's gonna go. So this little video about a little donation in a little experiment obviously isn't about $24.98. It's about designing the kind of person that you want to be. I want to be the kind of person who doesn't need to be rich to be generous. I want to be the kind of person who isn't going to wait until later to actually act on something. I want to be the kind of person who sees a small number, like $24.98, and is still all in. And I think if you're here still, you're probably the same way. So maybe this is the real lesson here. Number one, small things matter when they compound over time through repeated, habitual action. But two, when they flow into bigger systems. So if you want to join me today, and again, literally no pressure, but if this resonated, pick literally any charity that aligns with your values and start small. Start with something that feels insignificant. You can donate $2 and buy a malaria net today. Start small, start imperfect, but start now. The world doesn't change from one giant act of generosity. And we already know from Elon Musk buying X instead of ending world hunger that we can't rely on one silver bullet anyway. We need 1,000 golden BBs. We need 1,000 tiny, tiny, tiny acts of generosity. That's what's going to change the world. And with that, thank you for being here and take care.